My name is Eliza Bennett. I'm 34 years old, and until 7 weeks before my wedding, I genuinely believed I understood what loyalty looked like. I thought loyalty meant consistency, showing up for the people you love, protecting each other emotionally, building trust slowly over years until it becomes something solid enough to lean your entire future against. What I didn't understand back then was that dishonest people use the word loyalty differently. To them, loyalty means silence. It means obedience. It means proving your love by sacrificing your own integrity. And I learned that lesson the night my fiancé looked me in the face and asked me to commit fraud for his younger sister. Up until then, I thought Adrian Cole and I were building a beautiful life together. We'd been together for a little over 4 years, engaged for 8 months. Our wedding was supposed to happen in Charlotte, North Carolina, in less than 2 months. I can still remember how safe he used to make me feel. Adrian had this warm, confident energy that pulled people toward him naturally. He knew how to calm a room, how to make tense situations feel manageable. When we first started dating, I loved that about him because I was the opposite. I liked structure, order, predictability. I work as an operations manager for a regional freight company, which basically means my life revolves around spreadsheets, vendor disputes, shipment timelines, damaged freight claims, and trying to stop expensive disasters before they happen. Not glamorous. But I'm good at it. I like facts because facts don't manipulate you emotionally. Numbers either add up or they don't. Adrian used to tease me about that. "You trust spreadsheets more than people," he once laughed while sitting beside me on the couch as I finished quarterly reports late one night. I smiled and told him spreadsheets had never lied to me before. Funny how that turned out. The beginning of the end started with Madison. Adrian's younger sister was 29 years old and somehow always recovering from a situation that was supposedly someone else's fault. One manager was threatened by her personality. One company was toxic. One coworker was obsessed with getting her fired. There was always an explanation, always an excuse, always someone else to blame. For months, Adrian begged me to help her get a position at my company. "Family should help family," he kept saying. And because we were engaged, he started framing it differently after a while. "She's your family too now, Eliza." That sentence wore me down eventually. I resisted at first, because I knew exactly what happens when personal relationships mix with corporate accountability. But Adrian was persistent in this soft, emotional way that made refusal feel cruel. So, eventually, I gave in. That was my mistake. I got Madison hired as a logistics coordinator trainee. Entry-level position. Good salary. Benefits. No heavy labor. A genuine opportunity for stability if she treated it seriously. For the first few weeks, everything seemed mostly fine. She talked too much, showed up late occasionally, acted like rules were optional suggestions, but nothing catastrophic. Then the numbers started feeling wrong. At first, it was small enough that I almost ignored it. Duplicate fuel reimbursements, vendor credits that didn't align correctly, temporary entertainment expenses without proper approval. $200 here, $400 there. Then bigger amounts started surfacing. One refund processed twice. A maintenance return credited under suspicious timing. Approvals appearing under my credentials while I was in meetings or off-site. That got my attention immediately, because I know my systems. And I know my habits. I started quietly investigating without telling anyone. I pulled timestamp records, badge logs, desktop access histories, browser sessions. The pattern became obvious frighteningly fast. Every suspicious approval traced back to terminals near Madison's workstation, or to windows of time shortly after I'd been pulled away from my office. I remember sitting alone at my desk after hours, with the fluorescent lights humming overhead, while my stomach slowly turned cold. Because once the evidence started connecting together, I already knew where it was heading. Total damage when I finally completed the audit? $12,860. Not enough to destroy the company. Absolutely enough to destroy my career if handled incorrectly. And the worst part? Every approval carried my credentials. I barely slept that night. I kept replaying possibilities in my head, hoping I'd missed something. Some alternate explanation. Some misunderstanding. But deep down, I already knew. The next morning, I brought everything directly to my director. Every screenshot. Every log. Every timestamp. Every discrepancy. He reviewed the file silently for several minutes before finally looking at me. "Eliza," he said carefully, "I know you didn't do this, but because these approvals came from your login credentials, legal needs every piece of documentation immediately." So I gave them everything, including one detail I hadn't thought mattered before. About 2 months earlier, Madison had casually asked oddly specific questions about vendor override permissions and approval hierarchies. At the time, I thought she was simply curious. Now it sounded like scouting. That afternoon, HR and company counsel pulled Madison into a conference room. She denied everything at first, for exactly 7 minutes. Then they showed her a security still of her sitting at my desk using my monitor while I was downstairs handling a carrier escalation call. After that, she cracked. Not honestly. Not fully. But enough. She admitted she'd been moving money temporarily and thought she could replace it before anyone noticed. When counsel asked where the money went, her answers kept changing. Debt. Personal expenses. Stress. Complicated situations. Nothing consistent. By the time I finally left work that evening, I felt emotionally exhausted in a way I can barely describe. But nothing compared to what waited for me at home. Adrian was already inside my townhouse when I walked in, standing in the kitchen, still dressed in his office clothes. Phone clenched tightly in his hand. Pacing. Not crying. Not shocked. Furious. The second I stepped through the door, he exploded. "How could you do this to Madison?" I blinked at him slowly. "What?" "You went to your company before talking to me," he snapped. "Do you understand how serious this is now? Do you understand what this is doing to my family?" I set my keys down carefully. "Your sister stole from my company using my credentials," I said evenly. "What exactly did you expect me to do?" His jaw tightened. "She panicked, Eliza. She committed fraud. She was going to fix it. With what money?" That question hit harder than I expected, because something flickered across his face for half a second. Not surprise. Fear. Then came the sentence that changed my entire life. "If you're loyal," Adrian said coldly, "you'll lie for my sister." I honestly thought I'd misheard him. I stared at him. "What?" His voice became slower this time, more deliberate. "If you're loyal, you'll tell them Madison had your permission. You'll say the approvals were yours." The room went completely still around me. I remember hearing the refrigerator humming softly behind him. Remember noticing one of our wedding invitation samples sitting on the counter? Remember realizing the man I loved was asking me to destroy my own life for his family, without hesitation. "You can fix this," he continued. "We're about to be married. That means something." Something inside me went emotionally numb right then. Not explosive, not dramatic, just cold. I looked at him and suddenly saw someone completely different from the man I thought I knew. "I'm loyal to the truth," I said quietly. Adrian laughed once.
Sharp. Cruel.
"So your company matters more than family?" "No," I said, "but marriage does not mean helping your sister commit a crime." Then he made the mistake that destroyed whatever tiny piece of trust I still had left. "She was trying to help with the wedding," he snapped. "It was just money. She could have paid it back." I froze. She? The silence afterward told me everything. Adrian realized immediately what he'd revealed. "We already used some of it for deposits," he admitted too fast. "But we could still fix this if you stopped escalating." We. Not she. We. I felt physically sick. Suddenly, all the upgraded wedding details made sense. The expensive rehearsal dinner package. The designer reception shoes. The unexplained vendor upgrades Adrian kept insisting were handled. I'd thought his mother helped financially. Now I wasn't sure anymore. Adrian immediately tried backtracking. "You're twisting my words." "No," I said softly. "I'm finally hearing them clearly." He kept talking after that.
Defending. Explaining.
Blaming stress. Blaming pressure. But emotionally, I was already gone. I walked into my office and shut the door behind me while he continued pacing angrily through the kitchen. Then I called a lawyer. Not because I wanted revenge. Not because I wanted drama. But because in a single night, I realized the man I planned to marry was fully willing to sacrifice my reputation, career, and future if it protected his family. And that realization terrified me more than the fraud itself. The attorney gave me 3 immediate instructions.
Separate finances tonight.
Document everything. Never argue verbally again without records. So that's exactly what I did. We had a shared wedding account containing $14,600. Most of it came from my savings. I transferred my contributions back into my personal account with full documentation. Then I emailed vendors. The venue. The florist. The caterer. We lost several deposits immediately. I didn't care. It still felt cheaper than marrying someone who viewed honesty as optional. Then I packed Adrian's belongings.
Carefully. Neatly.
2 suitcases. Several boxes. Shoes wrapped properly. Laptop placed safely on top. I even wrapped framed engagement photos in towels so the glass wouldn't break. That part still haunts me sometimes. The tenderness of leaving someone. Adrian stood in the hallway, watching me cycle between disbelief, rage, and tears. At one point, he whispered, "You're really ending us over loyalty to some spreadsheet?" I looked up at him. "No," I said quietly. "I'm ending this because your version of loyalty requires me to become dishonest." For the first time all night, he looked genuinely shaken. Like he still thought I might change my mind. But I didn't. He left for his friend Vanessa's apartment shortly after midnight. And after the front door closed behind him, I stood alone in the silence of my townhouse, with tears finally burning behind my eyes. Not because I regretted my decision, because I realized I never truly knew the man I almost married. I changed the garage code before I went to bed. And somewhere deep down, I think I already understood that the hardest part was only beginning. The morning after Adrian left, I woke up to 19 unread messages. 19. And not one of them asked whether I was okay. Not one asked how it felt discovering someone had used my identity to commit fraud. Not one expressed concern that I could have lost my job, my professional reputation, or possibly faced legal scrutiny because of what Madison did. Every single message focused on one thing: how much damage I was causing their family by refusing to protect them. Adrian's mother accused me of being heartless. One of his cousins told me I was destroying a woman's future over a temporary mistake. A bridesmaid I barely tolerated during wedding planning sent me a paragraph explaining that real love means standing beside your man during family hardship. That one almost made me laugh. Because apparently, in their world, love only flowed in one direction: toward Adrian, toward Madison, toward the family unit, never toward me. I ignored all of them. Around noon, Adrian emailed me instead. Subject line: please be reasonable. Even now, I remember staring at those words with this strange, detached disbelief.
Reasonable.
As if refusing to commit fraud made me irrational. The email itself was somehow both apologetic and accusatory at the same time. He claimed he never literally meant for me to lie. He said Madison had panicked because she felt pressure helping with wedding expenses. He said if I truly loved him, I would focus on solutions instead of consequences. That sentence stayed with me all day. Not because it hurt, because it revealed something ugly I hadn't fully understood before. Neither Adrian nor Madison actually believed consequences should apply to them. They viewed accountability as cruelty, rules as obstacles, truth as negotiable if emotions were intense enough. And somehow, I was the villain for refusing to participate. Later that afternoon, company counsel called me into another meeting. I walked in tense, despite knowing the investigation had already cleared me internally. Trauma does that to you. Once someone compromises your trust, your nervous system stays braced for impact. But my director surprised me. "Eliza," he said calmly, "the review is complete. You're fully cleared." I didn't realize how tightly I'd been holding my breath until that moment. Then he added something that affected me far more deeply than he probably intended. "You brought us facts before anyone had to question your integrity. That matters." I nodded once because suddenly speaking felt difficult. For the first time in days, someone acknowledged what this situation actually cost me emotionally. Not just financially, not professionally, personally. Because exposing Madison hadn't only destroyed my engagement, it shattered my entire understanding of the people I'd almost legally tied myself to forever. That night brought another surprise: a text message from Adrian's father. Raymond Cole was a quiet man, HVAC technician, soft-spoken, the kind of person who usually disappeared into the background during family gatherings, while louder personalities dominated conversations. We'd never been especially close, but we'd always respected each other. His text only contained 2 sentences. "Don't lie for Madison. You're doing the right thing." I stared at the screen for almost a full minute. Something about those words hit me harder than the endless harassment from everyone else. Because Raymond clearly understood exactly what his son and daughter were asking me to become. And unlike the rest of them, he wasn't pretending it was love. The next day, things escalated. I was halfway through a budget meeting when my phone buzzed repeatedly with motion alerts from my doorbell camera. At first, I ignored them. Then, another notification appeared. And another. Something in my chest tightened immediately. I excused myself from the conference room and opened the camera feed. Adrian was standing on my porch. Vanessa was beside him, near a white SUV. And the 2 of them were carrying my property out of the house like thieves. For several seconds, I just stared in stunned disbelief. Not because Adrian was collecting personal belongings. I'd already told him we could arrange pickup through a neutral third party.
No.
What shocked me was what he was taking. The kitchen mixer my mother bought me when I purchased the townhouse. Patio furniture I'd owned years before meeting him. Decorative pieces from my office. A framed print hanging above my desk. It wasn't grief-driven packing. It was punishment. I left work immediately. But instead of confronting him emotionally, I parked down the street and called non-emergency police assistance first. By the time I walked toward the house, an officer had already arrived. Adrian looked furious the second he saw me step out of my car. "There she is," Vanessa muttered dramatically. I ignored her completely. The officer reviewed the footage while I calmly explained the situation and clarified ownership of the items being removed. Then he asked Adrian several simple questions. Was his name on the deed?
No.
Utilities? No. Did he possess written proof establishing ownership over the property being loaded into the SUV? Also no. Watching reality dismantle Adrian's performance in real time was surreal. Because suddenly, he wasn't the confident, charming fiancé anymore. He became emotional. Then angry. Then wounded. He accused me of humiliating him. Claimed I was treating him like a criminal. The irony nearly took my breath away. At one point, he actually looked at the officer and said, "She's throwing me out with nothing." The officer glanced toward the SUV full of stolen household items and blinked slowly. I almost laughed. Instead, I simply stood there with a written checklist while boxes came off the porch one by one. No screaming. No dramatic accusations. No tears. And I think my calmness disturbed Adrian more than rage ever could have. Because emotionally manipulative people know how to fight emotion. What they don't know how to fight is detachment. When the officer instructed Adrian to leave everything that wasn't explicitly personal property, his expression hardened into something ugly. Under his breath, quietly enough that only I could hear, he hissed, "You ruined my life." I looked at him for a long moment, then answered honestly, "No, Adrian, your family ruined their own lives. I just refused to help hide it." He stared at me like I'd slapped him. Then he got in the SUV and left. The silence afterward felt enormous. That evening, my lawyer called. After reviewing the doorbell footage and message history, he told me something that shifted my entire mindset. "Stop treating this like a breakup," he said. "Start treating it like exposure management."
Exposure management.
Those two words changed everything. Because suddenly, I understood something clearly. This wasn't really about heartbreak anymore. It was about containment. Documentation.
Protection.
So I began archiving everything. Every message. Every voicemail. Every social media post. Every attempt to pressure me emotionally. And the more evidence I collected, the uglier the situation became. Meanwhile, investigators at work asked whether I'd ever noticed Madison giving Adrian money related to wedding expenses. At first, I said no. But later that night, alone in my quiet townhouse, memories started rearranging themselves differently. A pair of custom reception shoes Adrian claimed were discounted. An upgraded rehearsal dinner package he insisted was already paid for. Vendor deposits mysteriously handled without discussion. At the time, I thought he was trying to surprise me. Now every memory felt contaminated. By day 3, the emotional attacks intensified. Adrian's mother called me morally bankrupt. One bridesmaid messaged, "A real woman protects her future husband." A cousin I barely remembered meeting sent, "Hope your job was worth losing your marriage." That one actually made me stop and think for a moment. Because they genuinely believed that preserving a wedding mattered more than preserving my integrity. As if marriage itself was the ultimate prize, regardless of the cost. But the message that changed something emotionally inside me came directly from Adrian later that evening. "You were never loyal enough to be my wife." I read it twice. Then, unexpectedly, I laughed. Not because it was funny. Because for the first time since everything collapsed, I saw the truth clearly enough that it stopped hurting. Adrian still believed loyalty meant self-destruction. He still believed love should override morality. And somewhere along the way, he'd convinced himself that my refusal to ruin myself for him was betrayal. That realization freed me emotionally more than any therapy session probably could have. Because suddenly I understood. I wasn't losing a healthy future. I was escaping a dangerous one. The following morning, my director called unexpectedly. He wanted me to take over a larger shipping account Madison had previously assisted with before her termination. More responsibility. Better bonus structure. Higher visibility inside the company. "We trust you to stabilize it," he said. After we hung up, I sat quietly at my kitchen counter, staring out the window. It struck me then how strange life could be. While Adrian's family spent days insisting I'd destroyed my future, my actual future was quietly improving without them. And for the first time since the engagement ended, I felt something unfamiliar settling inside my chest.
Relief.
Not complete relief. Not peace yet, but the beginning of it. Because the constant pressure I'd lived under for months, the subtle emotional manipulation, the guilt, the expectation that love required endless tolerance for dysfunction, was finally disappearing. And once I noticed the absence of it, I couldn't unnotice it anymore. 3 weeks after Adrian moved out, the situation should have started fading quietly. Instead, it evolved. That was the unsettling thing about people who survive on emotional control. When guilt stops working, they simply change strategies. Adrian went from furious to performative. Suddenly, social media became his stage. At first, the posts were subtle enough that nobody outside the situation would recognize what he was doing. Quotes about betrayal, vague captions about loyalty, stories about heartbreak layered over sad music, and black and white selfies where he somehow managed to look exhausted and photogenic at the same time. One post showed him sitting alone inside his car, with mascara-smudged eyes from clearly forced crying. Some people in the comments practically worshipped him for it. You deserved better. Some women only care about money and careers. Family always reveals who truly loves you. I stared at those comments one night while sitting on my couch with my laptop balanced against my knees, and for a moment, I felt physically ill. Not because strangers believed him, because Adrian genuinely believed his own version of events. That terrified me more than the lies themselves. He had rewritten the story in his mind so thoroughly that exposing fraud became cruelty, while manipulating me became love. I never responded publicly. Never defended myself online. Never hinted at the truth. I simply archived screenshots and continued living quietly. My lawyer said silence often frustrates manipulative people more than confrontation, because silence denies them emotional access. He was right. A few days later, Adrian escalated again. It happened on a Tuesday morning. I had just settled into my office when our receptionist called upstairs, sounding uncomfortable. "Eliza," she said carefully, "your fiancé is here." I stared at my computer screen for a second before answering. My former fiancé. A pause. "He says he just wants to talk. Please ask him to leave." Another pause. "He refuses." Of course he did. I closed my eyes briefly, already exhausted. By the time I reached the lobby, security had arrived. Adrian stood near the front desk, wearing a dark charcoal coat I bought him for Christmas the year before. In one hand, he held a coffee carrier. In the other, a garment bag. For one dangerous second, seeing him standing there triggered old instincts inside me.
Memories. Comfort. Routine.
That's the difficult part about leaving someone you loved deeply. Your body remembers safety even after your mind recognizes danger. Then Adrian smiled at me, and the warmth vanished instantly. Because the smile wasn't emotional. It was strategic. "You look tired," he said softly, like we were meeting for brunch instead of standing in my workplace lobby after weeks of harassment. "What are you doing here?" "I brought your favorite coffee." "You need to leave." Security moved closer. The receptionist looked horrified. Several employees nearby suddenly became very interested in pretending not to watch. Adrian's expression shifted slightly when he realized the scene wasn't unfolding the way he imagined. Then came the performance. Slowly, dramatically, he pulled my engagement ring box from his coat pocket and placed it on the reception desk. "I hope your loyalty keeps you warm at night," he said, loudly enough for half the lobby to hear. The entire room went silent. It would have embarrassed me once. Instead, I felt strangely detached, like I was watching someone else's relationship implode from very far away. Security escorted him out moments later, while he kept glancing backward, clearly expecting emotional collapse from me. But I'd already cried all my tears weeks earlier. After he left, I walked downstairs calmly, picked up the ring box, and handed it directly to my lawyer that same afternoon. By evening, Adrian received a formal cease and desist order. No workplace visits. No uninvited contact. No third-party harassment. No public defamation. All communication through legal counsel only. I honestly thought that might finally stop him. Instead, things got uglier. Unknown numbers started calling me. One of Madison's friends opened with, "Man to man." I hung up before he finished because apparently even basic biology wasn't surviving this situation anymore. Another caller insisted Madison was too young to have a felony ruin her life, as if she accidentally tripped and committed financial fraud. Then Vanessa emailed me saying Adrian wasn't sleeping, wasn't eating, was having panic attacks. And if something happened to him, I'd have to live with it forever. That message sat in my inbox while I stared at it with complete disbelief. Because emotional blackmail only works if someone still accepts responsibility for your choices. And I didn't anymore. I archived the email beside the others. Then came the worst manipulation attempt yet. At 11:40 on a Thursday night, I received a text from an unfamiliar number. "Please answer. Madison is saying scary things. Adrian is panicking. We just need you to tell the detective you overreacted." For a split second, genuine fear hit me. Not for Adrian. For human life. Then I remembered what my lawyer warned me about. Crisis manipulation. Manufactured emergencies designed to force emotional reactions. So instead of replying, I contacted local police in their area and requested a welfare check. Then I forwarded screenshots to my attorney. An hour later, police confirmed Madison was perfectly fine. Alive. Safe. Playing video games. I sat at my kitchen table afterward, feeling this deep, exhausted sadness settle over me. Not heartbreak anymore.
Disappointment.
Because every new manipulation attempt revealed another layer of ugliness beneath the people I once planned to call family. But the real bombshell arrived the next afternoon. Raymond called me personally. His voice sounded older somehow. "Can we meet somewhere private?" he asked quietly. We met at a small diner off South Boulevard. When I arrived, he already looked exhausted. Not angry, not defensive, just tired in the way people become when denial finally collapses. After we sat down, he placed his phone carefully on the table between us. I need you to see something, he said. Then he slid the phone toward me. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at.
A message thread.
Then I saw the names. Adrian, Madison, and my stomach dropped. The messages were dated 2 months before everything exploded. Before the investigation. Before the engagement ended. Before I knew my relationship was rotting underneath me. I started reading. Adrian complaining about wedding expenses getting out of control. Madison joking that she could move money around temporarily. Adrian responding, Eliza only tracks big numbers. I physically stopped breathing for a second. Further down, Madison asked whether certain deposits had already cleared. Adrian replied, just make sure it never comes back on us. Us. Not her. Us. I kept scrolling while this horrible, cold numbness spread through my chest. The messages weren't vague. They weren't innocent. Adrian knew enough. Maybe not every detail. Maybe not every transaction. But enough to understand what Madison was doing. Enough to benefit from it. Enough to stay silent while I unknowingly planned a wedding partially funded through theft attached to my professional credentials. When I finally looked up, Raymond wouldn't meet my eyes. I found those by accident, he said quietly. Their messages synced onto a family tablet while I was resetting it. I swallowed hard. Why are you showing me this? His face tightened painfully. Because they keep telling everyone you destroyed this family, he said, and I'm done pretending they're innocent. That sentence nearly broke me emotionally. Not because it was dramatic, because it was honest. For weeks, everyone around Adrian treated truth like betrayal. And suddenly, this quiet, exhausted man was the only one willing to acknowledge reality. I sent screenshots directly to my lawyer and company counsel before I even left the diner parking lot. After that, events moved quickly. The company amended portions of its internal report. Detectives requested another interview with Adrian. He hired an attorney almost immediately. Honestly, it was probably the smartest decision he'd made all month. That same week, my own life unexpectedly shifted upward. My director officially promoted me to senior operations manager over the larger shipping account.
Higher salary.
Better bonuses. More authority. During the meeting, he told me something I'll probably remember forever. Pressure reveals character, Eliza. Yours held. I thanked him professionally. But later, alone in my car afterward, I cried. Because for weeks, Adrian convinced me integrity made me cruel. Meanwhile, the rest of the world kept rewarding me for it. The contrast was impossible to ignore anymore. A few nights later, Adrian left me a voicemail, despite legal instructions not to contact me directly. I still have it saved somewhere. His voice sounded exhausted, bitter, hollow. You didn't have to do all this, Eliza, he said. You could have handled this loyally. You wanted to punish me. I listened to it twice, then set my phone down quietly. Because the strangest thing had happened somewhere during those weeks. I no longer wanted revenge. I no longer wanted closure. I no longer even wanted him to understand me. I simply wanted peace. And for the first time since everything collapsed, peace finally felt possible. The protective order hearing happened on a gray Thursday morning that smelled like rain and wet pavement. Ironically, Madison's criminal case had a major court appearance scheduled the very same day. So everything collided at once. One final ugly chapter before the story finally ended. I arrived at the courthouse 20 minutes early, wearing a navy blazer and low heels, because somewhere during the past month, I'd learned something important. Looking calm unsettles dishonest people, especially when they expect you to look broken. My lawyer met me near the elevators, holding a thick folder under his arm.
Evidence.
Messages.
Footage.
Voicemails. Weeks of documented harassment compressed into paper. As we walked toward the courtroom, I spotted Adrian sitting beside his attorney. For one strange second, seeing him again made my chest ache. Not because I missed him, because I remembered who I thought he used to be. He wore a beige sweater beneath a dark coat and looked intentionally softer than usual, like he was auditioning for sympathy. Minimal expression, tired eyes, controlled posture. Performing innocence. When he finally looked at me, I saw something flicker across his face. Not love. Not hatred either.
Shock.
Because I think part of him truly believed I would eventually cave emotionally, that I'd miss him enough to undo all of this. But the woman walking into that courtroom was no longer the same woman who once confused sacrifice with devotion. The hearing itself lasted less than an hour. Adrian's attorney tried reframing everything as emotional fallout from a painful breakup.
Misunderstandings. Desperation.
Attempts at reconciliation. He was trying to save his engagement, she explained gently. My lawyer didn't even react emotionally. He simply handed the judge a packet almost an inch thick. Doorbell footage. Workplace incident reports. Third-party harassment. The fake emergency messages. The cease and desist notice. And finally, the voicemail Adrian left after explicit instructions to stop contacting me. The judge listened to part of it right there in the courtroom. I watched Adrian's face slowly change, while his own voice filled the room. You could have handled this loyally. The silence afterward felt heavy. Then the judge looked directly at Adrian. If contact was unwanted, he asked calmly, and legal counsel instructed you to stop, why did you continue? Adrian swallowed visibly. I was trying to save my relationship. The judge's expression didn't change. That does not give you the right to harass someone at home or at work. Just like that, the protective order was granted. 1 full year. No direct contact. No third-party communication. No approaching my home or workplace. It was strangely anticlimactic. No dramatic outburst. No emotional collapse. Just consequences arriving quietly. As for Madison, her case ended the same way. No dramatic courtroom speech. No shocking trial twists. Just a plea agreement.
Financial fraud. Probation.
Restitution payments. A permanently damaged professional reputation before age 30. I didn't celebrate. Honestly, by then, I felt too emotionally exhausted for triumph. Consequences had already done enough damage on their own. The strangest part happened afterward. Even after all the evidence, Adrian's mother still blamed me. Apparently, I'd chosen paperwork over love. Integrity over family. Career over compassion. At one point, she even told a relative I valued spreadsheets more than human beings, which was ironic considering her children literally committed fraud against a human being. Me. But by then, her opinion no longer carried emotional weight. That's another thing nobody tells you about surviving manipulation. Eventually, the guilt stops working. Not because you become cruel, because you finally understand you were never supposed to carry that guilt in the first place. Later that night, Raymond sent me one final message. Real loyalty doesn't ask honest people to become dishonest. I read it 3 times quietly in my kitchen. Then I cried harder than I had during the actual hearing. Because that simple sentence captured everything I'd been trying to explain for weeks. Adrian kept using the word loyalty like it meant silence, like it meant self-sacrifice without limits, like love required abandoning reality itself. But real loyalty never demands corruption. It never asks someone to destroy their own integrity to prove devotion. And once I understood that fully, something inside me finally healed. Financially, the wedding collapse still hurt. After refunds and cancellations, I lost nearly $5,000 between deposits, invitations, reservation fees, and custom orders.
Annoying. Painful.
Still infinitely cheaper than marrying the wrong person. My townhouse slowly started feeling like mine again afterward. The spare bedroom that was supposed to become a nursery someday became my office and home gym instead. I sold several unnecessary decorations Adrian insisted we needed during wedding planning and used the money to buy myself a better desk. That felt symbolic somehow. Choosing function over performance. Peace over appearances. A month earlier, I couldn't imagine dating anyone again. Not because I still loved Adrian. Because betrayal changes the way your nervous system responds to trust. But eventually, life starts moving again, whether you're ready or not. A few weeks after everything settled, I met a man named Daniel for coffee. Then, another coffee. Nothing serious. No dramatic sparks. No intense declarations. He worked in corporate compliance for another company in Charlotte, which honestly felt hilariously ironic considering my recent life implosion. At one point, after hearing the simplified version of the story, he blinked at me and asked, "So your ex basically wanted fraud included in the wedding vows?" For the first time in months, I laughed genuinely. Not the bitter, exhausted kind. Real laughter. The kind that surprises you after surviving something painful. Work stabilized beautifully after that. Sleep came back slowly. My reputation stayed intact. And the constant pressure I'd felt during my relationship with Adrian, that subtle, exhausting expectation to tolerate dysfunction in the name of love, completely disappeared. That was the part I never expected. The relief. Because once the chaos ended, I finally realized how emotionally tense I'd been for a very long time. Always compromising. Always smoothing things over. Always being asked to prove my love through tolerance. Tolerance for excuses. Tolerance for irresponsibility. Tolerance for emotional manipulation disguised as vulnerability. And suddenly, all of it was gone. The silence inside my home stopped feeling lonely. It started feeling safe. Looking back now, I think the scariest part isn't how close I came to marrying Adrian. It's how easily I could have convinced myself his behavior was normal. Because manipulation rarely arrives looking monstrous at first. Usually it arrives sounding romantic. Protect your family. Stand by your partner. If you love someone, you fight for them. And those ideas sound beautiful until someone twists them into weapons. Adrian truly believed love should override morality, that loyalty should outweigh truth, that protecting him mattered more than protecting myself. And maybe the saddest part is this. I think he still believes that. But I don't anymore. Real loyalty tells the truth, even when the truth is inconvenient. Real love does not demand dishonesty. And real partners do not ask you to destroy yourself to prove devotion. In my case, choosing honesty cost me a wedding. But it also saved me from a marriage that would have slowly destroyed my peace, my self-respect, and eventually my entire identity. So yes, I chose the truth. And if I had to live through all of it again, I would choose it every single time.